On this episode of ResiWeek, we talk 8K demos at NAB, showrooming highlighting the network, and does remote destroy culture? All this and more on this episode of ResiWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ResiWeek, episode 322, New Stories to Tell.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by Crestron.
Welcome to this episode of ResiWeek. This is your weekly roundup of all the latest news and stories for the residential AV industry. I'm your host, Matthew Scott for AVNation.tv. And this week I'm pleased to be joined by two of my good friends. First, we have Mr. Mitchell Klein. He is the executive director at the Z-Wave Alliance. How you doing, Mitch?
Hey, it's great to be back again. Love being on air with you and, of course, with Jeremy. And glad to be here.
Thank you for joining us. The Jeremy that Mitchell so fondly speaks of is our good friend, Mr. Jeremy Glowacki. He's the executive editor at Residential Tech Today, coming to us today, not from a pool Lanai, which I was kind of hoping for, but he's on vacation and spending some time with us. So thank you so much for that. How you doing, Jeremy?
I'm doing well. Yeah, it's nice to have a view of the ocean while I'm on a podcast as a guest. You're my one work-related activity this week, so congratulations for getting me. Yeah.
I know it's all Mitchell, but I'm touched.
Well, you know, that was part of it. I vowed to only be on podcasts with Mitchells. Last month it was Mitchell the producer. This is Mitchell Klein, the famous Mitchell Klein. So good friend and favorite.
Lifetime Achievement Award winner. You know, we could go through a list.
Yeah. We don't need to. I'm just thrilled to be here with you guys. It's so much fun. So.
All right, gentlemen, let's kick this off with a story that comes to us from Residential Systems. 8K demos have been planned for NAB, the NAB show in Las Vegas in 2022. If you don't know what NAB is, that's the National Association of Broadcasters. So if you're a filmmaker, if you're a TV, like local TV news network, if you are a film producer, if you're a TV producer, if you make shorts on like YouTube, at some point you will end up going to NAB. I used to love NAB. I haven't been in a couple of years, but it is arguably my most enjoyable trade show. Don't take anything personally against that CEDIA or Avixa, but I love NAB.
Ouch.
Right? Now I'm an old film guy. It's where I started. So I love it. It's cameras. And lots of cameras. Makes me happy. All right. This is, I don't want to say this is a huge deal, but I think it is a bigger deal than most people are realizing. It's going to be in the Futures Park of the West Hall, and they're going to essentially demonstrate, the 8K Association is going to demonstrate the evolving maturity of the 8K ecosystem. So, Mitch, I want to start with you on this. This is, to me, going to be a really big deal because 8K is not new. It's been around for a little bit. There are a few people filming in it, but it's not yet anywhere near the mainstream. What needs to happen for content creators? And I use that knowing that most people will think YouTube and TikTok when I say that, but it does cover the entire swath of the TV and film industry. What is it going to take for that industry to make that leap? And then what's the time frame on when that trickles down to us?
Let me take my crystal ball on this one. I just want to know, does this mean I'm going to have to buy another new TV again?
Yes, it does.
I mean, I can really see why it's exciting for content creators. Absolutely, I could see that. I mean, the ability to customize your shots, to zoom in on your shots, things that, I can see that as really significant ability to manipulate the images that you've created. In terms of viewing, I don't know. I mean, how much more detail do we want on a network news broadcast, or how much do you really need on a sporting event? I'm not sold on it on the viewer side. And I'm definitely open-minded to hear it. But on the content side, wow, that's going to be awesome. And I think once the tools are available, I see that being a very, very positive progressive technology for all of you filmmakers.
I like it. And I'll say I don't care about the local news, but I would be really happy if the referees and the umpires had some 8K content to zoom in and go, yeah, that was actually last touched by UConn.
I don't know
Not
that
South
that's gonna help
Carolina.
them.
That was touched by UConn. Come on. And if you watch last night's game, you'll understand.
I think body cams are what they need, but that's a whole other conversation.
That's a whole, yeah, we're not touching that one. Not at all. But thank you. Jeremy, Mitch brought up a really good point from the evolution of this, right? Even when 4K came out, I deal personally, my company deals with a lot of house of worship, a lot of churches, and we'll put in 4K systems to give us a wide shot in 4K that we down convert to 1080p and use the same shot to punch in and get another 1080p zoom shot. Out of one camera, we get two different angles. It's fantastic. That is going to be a big deal, but we also saw through the Tokyo Olympics that they streamed 8K to a couple of countries. They mentioned in the article 8K TVs in Brazil. We're seeing Samsung has them on the market. I believe Sony has them on the market. Are we going to sit back as an industry and really wait for content, or are we going to kind of jump the gun again the same way we did with 4K and just, hey, if you're an early adopter and you want it, we will sell this to you?
Yeah, I don't doubt that's going to happen. There's always people like that. And we're going to be at trade shows as the professionals who talk about this stuff and who, in your case, actually sell this stuff. And you're going to get so far ahead of the curve because you forget what is real and what is just trade show conversation, you know? I mean, I lost track at 4K when, you know, I'd have to talk to neighbors and friends who wanted to know more about the latest TVs. And I would lose track of what was real and what was vaporware for me at a trade show. You know, what was a demo model and what was widely available. I'd have to stop and go to a retail store like a, you know, Best Buy or something and see what are they actually selling. And of course, I'm the worst when it comes to investing in a new TV because I always feel like there's just one thing better that I need to wait for because I've been through that curve so many times. And it took me a minute to get the 4K TV, and I don't regret it at all now, although I've learned what I should have known better and missed out on in terms of lighting array and things like that. But when you go bigger on a screen, and we know like the micro LED and all that, mini LEDs, all that stuff's going on, the better the resolution, the better those big images are going to look. So, you know, in your commercial applications, there's going to be huge improvements there. How big can you go in a house? And it's got to be those really high-end, high net worth walls of video that you're going to see, that you really see the difference. But in a theater, I mean, how much more resolution can you get? You're actually probably going to process that down to something more cinematic always to make it look like what it should be in a movie. The live TV, that's going to look amazing. It's going to look like it's popping off the screen. And you're right, it's like that replay situation. That's going to be amazing because you're not going to have pixels when it goes down there.
Think I can trade up my 3D TV, maybe?
No, you gotta keep wearing the glasses and keep watching that demo reel of Avatar again. Oh, I was actually at my dad's house last weekend, and he's got an older Panasonic that has the 3D in it, and for whatever reason, he keeps getting the pop-up that it's like 3D is available. Click OK to start. It's like, should we do that? I'm like, no, we should not. Don't ever do that.
I have a pair of Epson goggles that I've never opened that I should try to sell on the black market somewhere.
Yes. I'm sure someone will buy them for $5. All right, gentlemen, let's jump into our next story of the day. This comes to us from Residential Tech Today. A new showroom reflects an integrator's belief in enterprise-grade technology. Sound and Vision out of Mooresville, North Carolina, has a 3,100 square foot showroom where he's showing a ton of stuff, but focusing on his network solution and showing how everything essentially that goes into that showroom and that is potentially going to be in a customer's home relies on the network, and he's using this to really show all of the things that they do to encourage a strong network. And the part I love at the bottom or further down is Mark mentions that, he will turn down projects where they will not put in a proper professional grade network solution and monitoring solution, which I kind of love and also kind of disagree with, but that's a topic for discussion. Jeremy, is leading with the network going to become the new norm? For the longest time, integrators would lead with, hey, we build the best media rooms, or we can hide technology the easiest and seamlessly and all this other jazz. DiPietro, he's leading with the network. Is that going to become the new norm?
Well, I talked to Mark last week for my podcast, actually, because I wanted to go a little bit beyond the story and learn more about his company. And this is one of those stories that you pick up on that kind of has a PR attachment, and you get a spin that's sort of from the manufacturer standpoint, just showing our cards a little bit. I don't think he always leads with networking necessarily. He's actually really into lighting fixtures, which is one of those categories you hear about and you wonder if people are actually doing it in the integration side. He's doing it for real, and it's given him an entree with his architects and his interior designer partners that he didn't have before. They're not winning all those jobs, but it's given him a new story to tell beyond entertainment technology. But I believe that because the reliability of the equipment that he sells is so based on the network, the robust nature of the network, that it just is such an important ingredient that it always is part of that conversation in the early stages with the client. To say that he rejects a client because they don't want that enterprise grade is probably a little bit of an exaggeration. I think he probably will take the business that he can get there and be happy with it. But it's a really important ingredient, and I think that he really makes sure there's an emphasis there. I do think that he, like a lot of good integrators, they interview the client, they find out what their interest level is, where they are going. That's where their conversation is going to start. It's going to be, are you looking at it as a theater? Are you looking at it as lighting control, shades control, lighting fixtures? That's where it really starts. And at the backbone, the core backbone of the system has to be a good network.
Yeah, I love it. And I'll caveat it with, if you're going to take on a job that has a subpar network or doesn't include monitoring, just get the sign off. It lets you charge more in the long run. It's perfect. Just get the sign off. Mitch, when you see this, one of the things that I find not surprising per se, but interesting, is he just built out a new showroom. We keep hearing every 2-3 years that showrooming is dead. And yet you have everyone from the big box stores. They're rebuilding and rebranding most of their stores out into a more experience-based approach. We see Mark and Sound Vision in this case building out a 3,200 square foot showroom. Are showrooms really the best? Like, obviously they come in fades, but are they really the best way to bring somebody in who doesn't know what they're looking for and get them on board and get them to where they want to be?
Simple answer, no question about it. No, really, I think it's really important to give a potential client the experience, especially talking about networks or whatever other type of technology you want to talk about, lighting, what have you. If the client has not experienced it before, it's a lot easier to paint the picture in your showroom than it is to try and explain it on a website. And by the way, I'm not dissing websites. You kind of need both. Yeah. You need to be able to address whatever means to expose your potential customers to the skills that your company provides. So yeah, showrooms, the only reality behind it is once you build it, you have to keep your eyes fresh looking at your showroom because you get used to it, and you know what? Parts start getting old, things stop working the way they were, or there's new products in. So you have to really make a long-term commitment to keeping your showroom updated. It's great day one. By year 3, have you really, focused on it and kept it current? That's the hard part. not building it, but keeping it current.
Yeah, no, we've got a client, and they own a fine men's store, and they tell me they don't reno the store, right? And it doesn't get renoed every year, but they move clothing. Obviously, they sell clothing, but they move their feature clothing, which is a little bit more, fast paced than technology even, but they move that every 3 months. They are redesigning
it's seasonal things like that.
Everything.
Right.
It's so fast.
Well, you just even brought up the topic of, we just talked about 8K, right? Sorry.
No.
Just giving you this example. You talk about 8K, right? That showroom's been built. 8K. Now, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to be able to show 8K to the extent that someone will see it and go, oh my God, I got to have that, as opposed to just swapping out a TV. So these are the kinds of things you really have to map out, long term when you build a showroom.
Yeah, that's a really good point that doesn't get touched on enough. All right, let's hit our last story of the day. This comes to us from CE Pro. Is remote and hybrid work destroying company culture? Supposedly, a new study from MIT and WebEx by Cisco says that it actually improves company culture as well as feelings of inclusion and diversity within the workplace. I'm going to question this just because for every single article that says this, I can find you another one that says the exact opposite. That being said, I do think it's an interesting conversation for this reason. I think people have lost just how to interact with people in person. My wife went out to a store the other day, and up here we just finally dropped the mask mandate up here, and it's the complete separation, right? You have some people super happy because they don't have to wear masks anymore. You have a bunch of people who are wearing masks. This is not to get into a mask debate, but I found the number of people that have been in stores yelling at other people, not over masks, just in general. All right, let's get back on topic before I go too far down. Mitch, when you see an article like this, I do feel that you can make you can challenge this or accept it either or, right? You can say that by being remote, it is leveling the playing field per se. You can also say that being remote makes it really challenging for that, young couple or single couple who has a 1-bedroom in New York and both people are trying to work remote from the same stinking kitchen table. There's a lot of challenges with this. How do we and you specifically as somebody from a fairly big corp, how do you go about trying to manage how your employees come to work?
Yeah, that's a tough question. But first, just for reference, we're a global organization. We've got offices all around the world, and having to force everyone to do Zoom type and remote work actually was a phenomenal opportunity for everybody to get to know everybody and flatten the management structure. So the overall, as much as it was frustrating, the overall experience was phenomenal. And I think that first part of that study is right on. It really helped to grow corporate culture. The downside to that is, okay, now that people start coming back to work, our company has offered up a flex opportunity where each individual site can determine, what does a flex mean? Some sites say you got to come in twice a week. Some say 3 times a week. Others permit, a full-time offsite. And sites will typically say, okay, on, say, every Thursday, everyone comes in. So you have this, kumbaya moment, if you will. But I am very confident that within the next year or so, people who are on this flex program, who've given up their desks, are going to start feeling left out. That whole FOMO thing you hear about, there's no question in my mind when they do the happy hour or they bring the lunch in or they have the guest speaker, being remote in is definitely going to detract away from the closeness and the camaraderie. It's not going to help it.
That's a real good point, Mitchell. Jeremy, if we kind of preclude the last, 2 years, There's always been those companies where there's one random team member who's in Idaho and the rest of the team is down in Albuquerque. And it's, they're a part of the team, they're helping out a ton, but yeah, they get zoomed in when they're doing an all hands meeting and they're kind of there and they're kind of a part of it, but they're up on the screen by themselves and it's weird. But they also miss out on, when donuts come in or when the team decides to go out for lunch or to the pub afterwards and do all the little team building things that half the time are unplanned and more successful than the planned team building. But is there a way that the AV community can help employers and employees try to shrink that gap when it's not so, pandemic necessary, right? As we're coming out of this, is there a way that we can come in and kind of do an after action report and then try to help, again, all aspects of the people involved in this utilize remote better?
Yeah, it's fun. I was starting to laugh a little bit as you're describing that one random person, because I was that random person for a while with my company. Yeah, I worked in a New York office for many years, and when technology got to a point where I could move back to my hometown, I moved back, and what wasn't really in the cards then was the video conferencing yet, and Zoom wasn't really a thing. It kind of developed over time, but at that point, it was more of like a Slack community thing, or some kind of a instant message kind of situation. And that became the new water cooler for me temporarily. So then technology evolves and Slack channels still exist with companies. And it's still a very good communication tool to have real-time conversations just typed in. But I think when we were considering doing a follow-up to the Crestron acquisition of One Beyond, and we've got Henry Clifford's doing a review for us this week on the Vadio IntelliShot auto tracking camera. And these kind of technologies that sort of track people in the room so you can get up and move around, or you can have multiple people, from the standpoint of that person watching a room full of their colleagues and their remote. When they speak, the camera will adjust and zoom in on that person so you can have a more interesting dynamic experience from a video conferencing standpoint. You're never going to get that full cultural experience. That was a thing that I very much fully realized I was missing out on when Christmas rolled around and you had a holiday party and everybody's bringing in something. And it's like the cheap version of a holiday party where it's a what do you call it when everybody brings something? It's a
like a Secret Santa or something?
No, like food. Like
like a potluck.
Potluck, yes.
Yeah.
And in a way, I was like, thank God I don't have to bring something to the potluck. That seems like, why can't the company fork over a restaurant bill or something, go out to eat? But then there was just like a fun thing. You hear, oh yeah, this guy, they really love their chili and they're going to bring their chili. And you did feel that FOMO, and it was unfortunate. So it's hard to really mimic the culture. But I think because so many of us have now been in this remote situation, it's maybe a different expectation of what that culture needs to be. And as long as you're able to connect and see your colleagues and have a regularly scheduled visual representation of who you're working with, you don't feel completely isolated and out of it. And it's a very oddly, the idea of Zoom, which seems like kind of cold and distant, there's a intimacy to it too. I mean, you're inviting someone into your space if it's your home or whatever. And yeah, it can be awkward if you're in a single room apartment and you're sharing space. But I can now interview people that are fairly famous, and I am almost one-on-one in their space. Like, it's a really weird intimacy that didn't exist before. We do a phone call and it's not the same in the old days. Now you're right there. So there's something to be said for the video conferencing, even though we've all kind of gotten burned out by it. I think we've also come to realize that it's on our own terms. You can be there and kind of crop your world and show them this is my hotel room or my condo at the beach, and you can see what you need to see, but not the bathing suits hanging off the chair and the out of the frame, that type of thing.
Well, and I think that's always the interesting side because, even in my household, I'm doing this show from my house, from my basement office, which is also a studio. My wife will do a conference call or a video conference from like the kitchen with kids in the background screaming. And I'm like, honey, you can use my office. And she's like, nah, it's fine. I'm like, oh, okay.
There's another piece we didn't talk about, which you see more on the corporate side, which is out of sight, out of mind. So you're not at the office, so you're missing the head in the door conversations that are not always social. Sometimes they're really business related. And you know what? Your ideas aren't getting there, and your opportunities to contribute are not always there. And there's promotion opportunities where you may, well, it may be better to have someone who's kind of here in the office a little bit more. These will be the unspoken things. These are the things that companies will not own up to, but that's the reality. And, as much as the social piece is critical, I think, in the culture, so is being involved, and you're going to miss opportunities to be involved when you're not actually in the office.
Oh, so that's a huge one. That's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest point is.
And that's why I think people will be going back to the office.
Yeah, you want to be able to pop your head in and knock on the door and be like, hey, boss, I got a quick question for you. Even if it just means you're getting seen. All right, gentlemen, let's wrap it there because I have somebody's door to go knock on. Mitch, if people want to connect with you, learn more about the Z-Wave Alliance, where can they do that?
You can reach out to me, Mitch at zwavealliance.org, or just go to www.zwavealliance.org, and you can always tweet at or to me, Mitchell_Klein.
Excellent. Jeremy, my friend, if people want to connect with you next week when you're home from vacation, or learn more about residential tech today, where can they do that?
Our website's restechtoday.com. Please subscribe to the magazine. We've got a digital version and a print, and subscribe to our podcast as well. Residential Tech Talks are on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and you can find it on the website as well. And to find me on LinkedIn, probably the best way. And great to connect with anyone out there that's got a good story to tell.
Excellent. Thank you both again for joining us. Thank you for joining us as well. If you'd like to connect with me online, you can do it at Matt D. Scott on Twitter and most other social platforms. But more importantly, please visit AVNation.tv, where you'll find this show as well as a wide variety of other shows with all the verticals that we cover. When you visit the website, please take a moment to check out our supporters. We are extremely thankful for their support and ask that you check them out as well. Thanks again for watching. That's all the time we have for this episode of ResiWeek.